25. Oh, I didn't give out source sheets. Today's shiur is sponsored by my dear friend Gitzel Hana. For Refuah Shlema for Shifra Ilana Bas Rachel Pamina. She should have a speedy, miraculous recovery. And we're also going, yesterday there was a terror attack a few minutes away in Gush Etzion. The shiur should be Lilei Nishmas Aaron Cohen, who was murdered. And in for Refuah Shlema for one of the women from Efrat who was in her car at the time and is injured. She's in the hospital now. She should be stable. Her name is Aviat Sofi Bat Nechama. She should make a full recovery. Oh, there we go. And Shlomi just got back from the Chabad convention. What? And all the other injured, if anyone knows their name. There we go. Welcome back. My tzaddik of husband even helped me prepare, like, on the phone on the way back from the airport.
I saw you in the picture.
Missed you.
Yeah, 8,000.
You did?
No.
Live. Good morning, Miriam, and good morning to everyone who's watching live. Everyone should have a refuah shalema. We are in Parshas Toldos. I love Bereshit, which is why I'm still teaching until we have this baby, because we can't miss the Parshah of Bereshit. Toldos is such a fun parsha. So much happens. Toldos means Ve'ela Toldos. These are the children of Yitzchak ben Avram. This is the story of Yitzchak, the son of Avram. Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. So this is Yitzchak and Rivka's story. Also, the main story things that happen are that Yitzchak and Rivka have twins. They also wait 20 years for children. They're childless. Yitzchak prays for his wife. They have twins. 40. Yitzchak is 60. Their twins are Yaakov and Esau. We have the whole Rivka's difficult pregnancy. She says that she had a very difficult pregnancy. She was not sure what's going on with her, and she had no ultrasound to see that she had twins. And she goes to Shem, who used Ruach HaKodesh to tell her that she has twins, and that's why she has this conflict going on inside of her, which we'll talk about today. And then the other main, again, we have in this week's Parsha, so Esau is the Bechor. Then Yaakov is born holding Esau's heel. Esau is called Esau because he was born covered in hair, and he was red. And they called him Esav, I guess, means like hairy. Yaakov was clutching his heel, and therefore he was called Akev, Yaakov. Esav turns out to be a hunter, a wild man, a bloodthirsty man, a cunning man, very business savvy. And Yaakov just wants to sit in his tent and learn Torah all day. They're the exact opposites. And Rivka says, oh, that's what was happening inside of me whenever I passed a place of idol worship. I felt movement. And whenever I passed a place of Torah study, and that's what we'll learn about a little bit today. Then comes this really unusual story where there's this verse in this week's Parsha where Yitzchak comes home hungry from the field and says, give me some of that soup and pour it down my throat. So unusual that the Torah speaks about that. I've given a shiur in the past on the significance of that. He says he calls it the red. He doesn't even call it lentil soup. And that's why we have lentil soup here on the stove. And if you come in person, you get lentil soup. It's a perk. And I will share my grandmother's amazing red lentil vegetable soup recipe with you guys. It is so hearty. I call it my hearty lentil soup. And so Yitzchak he's so hungry from murdering, the commentaries say, and they say, why was there lentil soup? Because that was the custom. It was they were mourning Avraham's, it was the Shiva of their grandfather Avram, and the custom was to make round foods to symbol the circle of life that comes and gets everyone on the way, and just like the egg of mourning, and Yitzchak sells his birthright. Yaakov says, fine, sell me your birthright. You're the Bechor. When Mashiach comes, you'll work in the Beit HaMikdash. If you give me the rights to be a Bechor, I'll give you the soup. And Yitzchak says, what do I care about this? I'm going to die anyways. Esau says, I don't care about, thank you, the Bechor. And he happily sells it for the soup. And now Yaakov becomes the firstborn. And that leads into, before the story of the trickery of the blessings, which we're going to speak about today, and Yaakov's and Yitzchak's marriage, we have history repeating itself. It feels like we're just like deja vu of last week's Parshio, where again, there's a hunger. And the hunger leads them down to, not Mitzrayim this time the food is in Gerar. What's beautiful about this in our lives, and I think one of the messages we learned from the idea that there's always a hunger, is that Hashem, we kept learning about this idea about shlichut, Hashem's sending you where you need to be. And when there's a hunger, so to speak, in our life, a lacking, if someone loses their job, God forbid, or loses something like a marriage or something, or their money or their stability, it's not by chance. Hashem makes these hungers because they had to go to Gerar, because there was a story that needed to unfold. And so instead of looking at it as like, why is this happening to me in the moment when things like someone loses their job, God forbid, it shouldn't happen to anyone. That's Hashem's clearest message of saying, I'm sending you somewhere else. There's your mission, and you're here for a mission in this world. You're here as a shaliach. And this happened because you need to go to Gerar, and the famine is just the catalyst to get you there. And so if we can use that for ourselves to look at all of the famines or the lackings or the pitfalls in our life that are forcing us to go somewhere else, say, okay, where is Hashem pushing me? Where do I need to go right now? Maybe there's another job I need that's even better for me. There's some sparks I have to uncover. Hashem is sending me somewhere else where I need to accomplish my mission. And it really transforms the whole way we look at everything. This is the Chabad Shulchan convention that my husband just walked in the house from, hence the pause in this recording. And like the Rebbe said over and over again, you don't need to be one of the official Chabad Shulchan. Every one of us is a shliach that Hashem sends on this world for a specific mission. That's the entire message of Eliezer being an Eved Avraham, being a shliach Avraham. It's who Rivka was. We'll learn today. She was the forced, where Sarai Menu and Avram left their place to go and bring neshamos back to Hashem. Everywhere they went down to Mitzrayim, they were bringing sparks back. They were elevating people, influencing people. Wherever we go, we have a mission in life. And that's the message of Vayetze in next week's Parsha, where it says, Vayetz Yaakov mi Be'er Sheva leCharan. Yaakov leaves Eretz Yisrael to go down to Haran because he has a mission to there raise a family, to be involved in the world, and to elevate the world. And so, anyways, that was a detour. So there is the famine. They go to Gerar. And deja vu, Yitzchak presents Rivka as his sister. I always say it's like the first situation of like, we're just friends. It's nothing serious. She's just a sister. She's a nobody. And so out of fear that he'll be killed by someone who wants her beauty, right? He learned from his father. And while they're hanging out there in Gerar, farming the land, Avimelech, the king, looks out and sees Yitzchak and Rivka laughing together or flirting. He says, why did you tell me she's your sister? She's clearly your wife. And the commentaries say, why can't you laugh with your sister? And they say that laughter, Yitzchak mitzachik es Rivka, laughing together is a euphemism for something intimate going on that wouldn't be done with a brother and sister. And we learn that that's like the highest level of like intimacy. Intimacy is never called it straight out in the Torah. There's different hints, but one of the highest levels, because we learned last week about the love story of Yitzchak and Rivka and how their relationship was on like the story that we learned about Shidduchim from, right? Because Yitzchak and Rivka were the afternoon of marriage. And so we learned that laughter is one of the highest levels of a relationship. The highest comes from a deeper place in consciousness. Laughing together is the highest level we could achieve for very Kabbalistic reasons, which we'll probably talk about later. And anyways, then comes this whole story in this week's Parsha where what we don't really know much about Yitzchak's life. We know that Yitzchak, we know the story of him blessing his child and the Akedah, and in between that, a marriage to Rivka, and the only other thing we know about him is how he dug wells. There is about 15 verses in this week's Parsha, which is a lot for the Torah, just discussing the wells that Yitzchak dug, the names of the wells, where they were, the fights with the Plishtim about these wells. And we have to ask, like, why is that significant? From all the things in his life, we want to know that he dug wells. Like, that's what their Torah is telling us. And we're going to learn.
Wasn't it that redug the wells?
Yeah.
He redug some wells and dug new ones. Exactly. He redug wells that Avraham bought. We'll talk about that today. I actually wanted to go through it in the Parsha with you. Yeah, so Yitzchak reopens the wells that were dug by Avraham and then digs even more of his wells. And then there's some fights with the Plishtim over the wells, but the waters of the third well are enjoyed in peace. And then comes the final, most dramatic story of the Parsha, where Yitzchak knows he's going to die soon and he wants to pass over the powers, the legacy. The blessings weren't just like, oh, you have a blessing from your father. The blessings were spiritual energies that whoever would receive these blessings would prevail, would receive the blessing of Avraham to be the one who continues the legacy and receives the promised land and receives the holiness. So it was a transfer of power. And Yitzchak, for some crazy reason, because he's blind according to Pshat, and he didn't know that Esav was so evil, wants to give them to Esav. And Rivka says, never going to happen on my watch. Esav is evil. He's a murderer. There's no way. And rather than just telling, we're going to discuss today this crazy teaching of rather than just telling Yitzchak, your son Esav is bad, she tricks him into giving the blessings to Yaakov by dressing up Yaakov as Esav, covering him in Esav's clothing, and having him pretend to be Esav. And that is the dramatic story where Yitzchak gives the blessings to Yaakov, brachos to Yaakov, and then Esav comes back, hears, and wants to kill his brother, and Yaakov has to run away, and that's where we ended this week's Parsha. And it always ends on like a cliffhanger. It's written really well, right? Like you have to wait till next week. Imagine you didn't have the next chapter, and you have to like wait for the next installment in the Ami magazine, right? And you're just like, what happened? Did he kill him? Did he survive? What will happen next? Will he ever see his father again? Find out next week. So stay tuned. Okay, so it's so hard to pick what to focus on because there's so many teachings of Chassidut in this week's Parsha. My favorite one that I could never skip is so fundamental that it covers the first 8 chapters or 9 chapters of Tanya, discuss this concept. The first question we have is about the first thing we want to discuss is the significance of Rivka's pregnancy, right? We've discussed this before where it says Rivka, she feels the children and the boys inside of her. Does someone want to grab me the chumash? Do you see the?
Anyone else want soup? Anyone want? Yeah.
Do you see the Gutnick set? The like straight ahead.
Yeah.
So the Bereshit.
Anyone else soup? Yeah.
So Rivka says she feels these 2 boys struggling inside of her, and what does she say? Im kain lama zanochi. If this is how it is, why did I even want this? Why did I ever want to get pregnant? Why is this me? Whoa! And so she says, I have to go ask of God. And what does Hashem say to her through Shem? Shnei goyim bevitnech. There's 2 nations in your body. Ushnei leumim mi'ayach, and 2 nations will from your insides. Yiparedu will separate. Uleom leom mi'ametz. And when one prevails, when one will prevail over the other. V'rav ya'avot sa'ir. And the greater one, the larger one, will serve the younger one, the smaller one. Now this verse is like the message of what is happening in our life. It's like the mission statement for us of understanding our inner world. Thank you so much, Gitzel.
No, I'm covered. Wait, who wanted this? I did not, sorry.
Oh, but Yisroel Tisabana Makirba means that her children struggled inside of her. Kabbalah tells us, right, we say this over and over again, that everything that we learn in the Torah is a reflection, is a mess. We're not just reading about the history of our fathers that happened a long time ago and our mothers. We're reading about ourselves, right? Yeah, Avram and Sarah, we said, are reading about our body and our soul. When Rivka is pregnant with twins, it's a message to every single one of us, male or female, to tell us that every one of you is a Rivka Imenu pregnant with twins, your whole life. How is that so? Every one of us, Chassidut and Kabbalah tell us, is pregnant with twins. Who are these twins? That we are all impregnated from the moment we're born with 2 souls. We are housing, just like Rivka was hosting these 2 nations inside of her, we are all housing 2 twins, 2 souls from the moment we're born. And this is how Tanya opens up. The beginning of Tanya, the first chapter, and the first 8 chapters says, if you want to know the answer to anything that's going on in your life, you first need to understand that you are pregnant with twins. That Hashem created you in a way that you have not just 1 soul, but 2 souls inside of you. And the soup smells so good. And no, isn't it great?
Really good.
No, that you have not just 1 neshama, but 2 souls inside of you. And why is this so important to know? Because these 2 neshamas are like opposites. And if you don't understand this, you feel like torn, like Rivka, like, am I crazy? What is going on inside of me? Why do I have these pulls to 2 different places? And when Rivka, and that's how we feel often in our life. We feel, without knowing that I am housing twins, that I have 2 souls inside of me that are so opposite, that are struggling to control my body. And they both want, and one will be up and the other will be down. They're always fighting. When one prevails, the other one loses. And when the other one wins, over me. And these 2 souls are my 2 inclinations, my 2 thrusts. One is my body that wants to, it's good and evil, but it's not really evil or good. It's just a pull to be human, physical, to do what feels good. And from the moment I wake up, they're battling. They're fighting over control over my body. Should I wake up right now? or should I go back to sleep? Should I wake up and go to the shir or sleep a little longer? Should I just sit on my phone longer or should I get up and be productive? Should I freak out when my kids are late and yell at them for missing the bus, or should I take a deep breath and just accept it? Should I eat this breakfast that's really bad for me, or should I eat something that I know will give me energy? From the minute we wake up, we have this conflict. One part of us wants to do the right thing, the neshama, the Yaakov inside of us. Is Yaakov, what does it say about him? He always wants to serve Hashem, learn Torah, do the right thing. I always want to help the other person, help my mom, help the person who asks me for help. Or do I succumb to my Esav, my body, which just is pulled to idol worship, to materialistic things, to being lazy, to being pleasure seeking, to not pushing past myself, to not being generous, to whatever that looks like for me, to yelling at my children, to self-judging, to being critical of myself, to thinking negatively about other people. And this battle is something that happens inside of us all the time. And the pain is not from the battle necessarily. The pain that Rivka experienced, that we experience, is from the lack of awareness. Because Tanya, the solution to her wasn't, she didn't really have a solution. There wasn't like, oh, here's what you should do. It was just the knowledge that you have twins inside of you, and they're diametrically opposed, and they're going to struggle for control their whole lives. And when one prevails over the other, and then that the smaller one, who's Yaakov, will prevail over Rav Ya'avot Sa'ir, let me see how the Torah translates it. Through Ruach HaKodesh, says that the elder, Rav is the elder one, will serve Sa'ir, the younger one. But what's interesting, we'll get to this soon, but why he's called Rav and not the elder. And so the answer to us is not necessarily to fix it, to say like, oh, you should get rid of your Esav inside of you, just give up Esav for adoption, send him away. No, it's the awareness. As soon as we're aware, we already have the upper hand. When I can wake up and be aware and tune in and pay attention to what's happening inside of me, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to struggle, there's going to be a pull of me, I'm going to be pulled to one way, I already have the upper hand, I can win the battle. And the first 8 chapters of Tanya, of Alter Rabbi's Tanya, literally just describe what's going on inside of you, the battle between the two souls over you to control you, and what the tendencies and the desires of your godly soul, and what the tendencies of your animal soul. And I teach this to my bat mitzvah girls because we only fully receive shockingly, you would think Hashem would first give you your godly soul, first give you Yaakov, but who comes out first in the Torah? Esav. And in our DNA, in our birth order, we first receive our Esav, our animal soul, our needs. A baby's born with just wanting his physical needs to be taken care of. Esav's not evil inside of us. The part of us that's animalistic or human, it's like a puppy. It just wants to survive. It just wants to eat food. And only after we only fully receive our godly soul at our bar bat mitzvah. We receive a part of it in like a little part of it when we receive our Jewish name. And then it kind of like hovers around us, and it only fully enters our body at our bar bat mitzvah. And that's why only then are we responsible for the mitzvah and culpable for the mitzvah that we do, because we don't really have a fighting chance of winning our our human self or our natural desires if we don't have our full godly soul to have a fighting chance. And what's even more amazing is that Esav is the stronger one, the larger one. Most of our life is spent, the majority of our life is spent dealing with Esav things, with eating, sleeping, our health, our body needs, our clothing, our house, maintenance, working, the physical world, being engaged in the world. That's why Esav is called not the older, but the Rav. And we can fight it and be frustrated about it. And sometimes I get so frustrated about it. And recently I've been just feeling so frustrated with all the things I have to do. And I just want to be present in these years with my children. And I feel like I barely get any time to be present because I'm so torn in so many ways. And Hashem made the world that way, and designed us that way. And so the key to dealing with this conflict that we have our whole lives is accepting that this is, for some reason, why Hashem made me this way, for a reason, because Hashem wants this, and we'll discuss and why that Hashem made us that way. But when we accept that Hashem intended for me to be this way, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not a bad person. That already gives me that mission of understanding. Someone once read the whole Tanya and said that at the end of the day, you can never get rid of your whole life is a battle. You're going to wake up and battle forever. You're never going to win this battle. You're never going to get rid of the Esav inside of you. You're going to be pregnant with him for your whole life. You're going to have these feelings of selfish, natural, human desires your whole life, and you're never going to win. And someone was so frustrated. He said, this is the reason you're created, for the struggle, for the beauty and the light that comes from the struggle, for the little wins. For some reason, that gives Hashem pleasure and nachas and laughter and joy more than anything else in the world. The greatest pleasure Hashem has is when we can be not holy people doing holy things, but unholy people doing holy things. When we can be human people who have struggles and have temptation and are pulled and have free choice and are in a world of darkness, and we choose to search for Hashem. It's like the pleasure of hide and seek in a way. It's like I'm hiding and you can keep pushing past and keep searching for Hashem in the coverings and all the darkness. That's Hashem's deepest desire, according to Chassidut, that Hashem wanted a dir b'tachtonim. Hashem wanted unholy people to overcome their unholiness whenever possible and be holy. And that's much more pleasurable than a tzaddik who doesn't have that struggle doing something holy. There's something so beautiful, like I always say, about your child who sends you a card, a birthday card that's written backwards, messed up. We worked so hard for it. We're not looking for perfection. Hashem is looking for the beauty of that struggle and the little wins that we have, and the fact that we struggle and keep trying over and over again. That's what's beautiful and meaningful to Hashem. And so it's not a mistake that we're this way. It's very intentional. And when we're not, the relief is like that there's nothing wrong with me. This is how we're created. That Hashem made that I come with my Asa first, and that it's larger. And at the end of the day, what does Hashem tell? What is Rivka told? Rav Ya'avot Sa'ir. Even though the majority of your life is spent in mundane things, and Hashem made it that 6 days a week, Tavod in the world, we're Melechas Avoda, we do work, and on Shabbos is only 1 day a week. It's much less. Nevertheless, the real me, my real essence, is my real truth, is my godliness, even though it is smaller and it doesn't take up so much of my day. And so the conflicts that happen when we don't know this is that we often feel like Rivka, like something's wrong with me, like Lama Zanochi, who is the real me? What is going on with me? The issue, if we were just animal souls, right? If we only had our animal bodily tendencies, we didn't have a godly soul, that life would be so easy. We wouldn't have that struggle because I could just live a materialistic life of pleasure and chasing pleasure and caring about my bodily needs and being selfish and doing what feels good for me, and I would have the best life if I only had one of the souls. The issue is that there's two of them and they're opposite and they're both inside of me and they're both struggling for me to listen to their voice. And the issue with that is that I can't enjoy my physical life. If I could just live my greatest life, I can't, because there's something inside of me that says this is not enough, this is not real, this is empty, this is false, this is you're more than this, and you can't enjoy it. You'll be miserable inside. So the Jew who has everything he can physically, there's something inside of him that makes him unhappy because he knows that there's more to life than this. He feels an emptiness. He feels that there's something more than this. And that's the struggle comes from, not from chasing the emptiness. And then, so when I feel like the conflict is which one is me? Am I the me that is involved in materialism and cares so much about my physical things, my physical needs and my clothing and how nice everything looks around me? And then on the other hand, I feel ill at ease when I come and portray myself as a Yaakov, because I always say I have a imposter syndrome. I come to this shiur and you guys think I'm this holy Rebbitzin, but I know deep down that most of my thoughts are not holy. Rini always doesn't believe me, but I promise you, the majority of my thoughts are very, very unholy, and they're very, very normal, and doom scrolling on social media and getting caught up in so many of the distractions of the world. And so then I feel this conflict inside of me of which is, and then I don't feel good either when I'm holy. So I'm holy, but then I feel that's not me either, because I feel I'm an imposter, I'm lying to you guys. You guys should have someone really holy teaching you Torah. And so there's this conflict, there's this constant, and when you learn that no, you're not one or the other, you're both. And that's okay. And that's how Hashem intended for you to be. It gives you that that Rivka says, okay, that's what gives her the peace of mind. And then she goes on and then she's at peace with it. And that acceptance is knowing that it's divinely designed. It removes a lot of the shame and the confusion, which is what torments us. The shame and the confusion about which one is the real me, right? Which lama zanochi, who is the me? So to summarize, Rivka pregnant with twins is the message for all of us, that every one of us houses, just like Rivka, a Yaakov and an Esav. And when we can have that awareness from the moment we wake up that there's this inner struggle going on, I could feel more understanding of which one, of not feeling torn, I'm an imposter, I'm pretending to be I'm pretending to be holy when I know that I'm not, and I know that the majority, the Rav of my life is Esav things. And I also don't feel that's the real, I also feel like, what's wrong with me if why can't I just enjoy them? Why am I feeling guilty all the time and bad for enjoying all those things? So,
Soup is great.
what?
Soup is great.
I'm so happy. My best soup. Okay, now we are left with the question, but which one is more me, right? Like we come out and we want to know which one is the more me. Am I more Esav? Am I more Yaakov? Am I just like, which one is the real me? And this is the wildest story. This is Rivka. The answer to this is understanding Rivka's transferring of the brachos. One of the big questions asked here is Rivka and Yitzchak are supposed to have like the perfect marriage, the ideal marriage, because they have the best relationship. We learned about this last week, and they're like the prototype relationship. But what can we learn from the fact that Rivka lies to her husband?
She cheats, yeah.
It says, why doesn't she do what she lies to her husband and she sneaks around him? Why didn't she do what Sarah did? Sarah, her mother-in-law, when she wanted to do the same thing and tell for him that Yishmael is bad, she just told him, Yishmael's a bad guy, send him away, and Avram listened to her. If Rivka would have convinced and said, Yitzchak, you're blind, Yitzchak's lying to you, he's committing all the worst sins, he's a horrible person, don't give him the transferring of the brachos, Yitzchak would have listened. What kind of message we learn from this in our marriages and like deceiving your husbands? Now, there is so much Kabbalah about deceit and using the holy deceit and like Kabbalah about like using like trickery for the holiness. That was another class. You can listen to last year's for that. But we're going to focus on today this crazy teaching from the Chidushei Harim, I believe. I heard from an article from Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson. There we go. Yeah, it's from the Chidushei Harim. So she could have just gone to, first of all, Yitzchak, we learned, wanted to give the brachos from according to Chassidut to Esav, not because he was actually blind, but because Yitzchak believed he wanted that the Esav, who represents the animal, the body, the human that's involved in the world, that was where the blessing should go to. It shouldn't go to Yaakov, who's the whole point of Hashem making the world is not for holy angels. It's for physical human beings. So he felt it's to elevate the world and to be involved in the world. So he said, I'm going to give the blessings to Esav, who's a man of the world. And maybe he knew how bad he was. But he said, if I give him the brachos, maybe the brachos will change him. And then it will help him do teshuvah. And then he'll utilize all his animal power capacity of his animal self for holiness and to elevate the sparks of the world. But Rivka knew that it wouldn't happen. It would never work that way, that Esav would take the brachos and just transfer them to evil, and he wouldn't be able to overstand that it was too far gone. And Rivka understood that it had to go to Yaakov, and that only through Chassidus, and the Alter Rebbe says this in Lakutei, in Torah Or, that only Esav would be elevated, but only through Yaakov. Through Yaakov, then Esav would eventually be elevated in the times of Mashiach. But it had to be through Yaakov. And so she could have told this to Esav. And that, you want to give the brachos to Esav. Remember we said that the last week that the body comes from a higher place than the neshama? Yeah. And that's why Avram had to listen, Kol Masher Tamor Lecha Sar Shma B'Kola, because even though the body down here seems like it's lower, the source of the body above is a higher place than the soul. The same exact thing is with Esav. So Yitzchak's desire to give the brachos to Esav is because Esav down here is lower, but his source above is a much higher place, and that's why he falls lower. That's one of the principles of Kabbalah, that whatever comes from a higher source above falls the lowest. And the imagery for this is that if you have a wall that breaks, the rocks that are the highest will fall the furthest, right? If you shatter a wall. And so therefore the souls or the things that come from the highest place in the higher world, in this world, fall the lowest. And that's why Esav in this world fell very low, but his source and his potential was so great. If I just give him the blessings, he'll use it to elevate the materialistic world and bring Mashiach. And that was his perspective. Rivka understood that it wouldn't happen.
I thought he was hoping they would be like partners. That he would handle the material and Yaakov would handle the spirit.
I've also read that as well. That Yitzchak was the body, Esav was the body, and Yaakov was the soul, and they would work together.
And that one would support the other, like
Rivka knew that Esav was too entrenched in the evil, that if he would get the blessings, he would just take all the power of Kedusha and send it to evil. And so now we go back to the question: why didn't she just tell this to Esav? Yitzchak can explain this to him. And here's this crazy teaching of the Chidushei Harim that. Okay. That Rivka knew that years to come, Yaakov's the brachais, and the Yaakov's descendants wouldn't continue to always look like Yaakov did, looking like a tzaddik, looking like an angel sitting in his tent. She knew, she had this nevuah and this vision that down the line there would be a simulation, there would be the poles of the world, and that many of the descendants of Yaakov would look on the outside like an Esav. You wouldn't be able to tell necessarily that they're Jewish. They would be dressing on the outside like an Esav. They would become affected by a simulation and by the darkness, the continuation of the darkness of Galus and the hiddenness and the coverings of godliness in this world, that many of Yaakov descendants wouldn't all look like Yaakov. They wouldn't all continue to be looking like Yaakov. And she said, if I give the brachos to a Yaakov who is dressed like a Yaakov, they will only be relevant they won't be relevant. How will the Jews who don't look like Yaakov on the outside feel the relevance of the brachos? Not only that, but who needs the blessings more? Who needs this power of the inspiration and the transfer of this the holy energy more? Is it the Jews who look like perfect like Yaakov? Or is it the Jews who are so far assimilated that they dress completely like Esav? From the outside, they're indiscernible from Esav. They smell like Esav. They feel like Esav. And they look like Esav. But on the inside, Hakol Kol Yaakov. And this is the most beautiful teaching on this verse. Hakol Kol Yaakov, right? Vayidai midei Esav, right? It's like says, come closer. He says, wait, I don't understand. Your voice is Yaakov, but your hands are Esav. And Rivka said, that's what it entails. Not only that, I've heard Rabbi Soloveitchik say, Rabbi Soloveitchik said that not only is it inevitable that Yaakov will be affected, many of the Yaakovs and the descendants of Yaakov will end up looking like Esav, but they need to be, there's a teaching also of the second Chabad Rebbe that says that in order to deal with the darkness of Galus, Yaakov has to be ready to put on the clothes of Esav, to wear his warfare, to put on his fighting, to fight like Esav, to be ready to fight our enemies physically, to literally go on the front lines and fight. And so Yaakov, she said, the Yaakov who needs the blessings, is not the Yaakov who looks like Yaakov, but it's the Yaakov who on the outside looks like Esav in his clothing, which represent not just his physical clothing, but his thought, speech, and action. Not only does he look like Esav, but he might even act like Esav. And so there'll be Jews down the line who act like Esav, and they're going to say, well, the brachos are not relevant to me. I'm just an Esav now, forget me. And she's like, no, this is who the brachos are for. The brachos are specifically for the Jew who feels so disconnected, who feels like an Esav, doesn't even feel connected to his heritage, who might say, well, I'm just an Esav on the outside. She said, no, you're still Yaakov on the inside. And that's why she intentionally dressed up Yaakov to look like Esav, so that the brachos would be relevant and applicable for the Jew who completely assimilates, who looks like an Esav, and even for ourselves. Not necessarily does it mean to assimilate, because we look like Jews, but there's so many parts of my life where I will say that I act like an Esav, and I feel like, well, am I even relevant to be here if I'm acting like an Esav? There's parts of my life where I feel like I take on the clothing of the Esav, where I do the wrong thing, I mess up and do an Esav action. And she says, no, that's just your hands. Your hands represent your external. The smell or the clothing are literally, they're just the clothing of you, but your call is your pneumius. Your voice is your inner voice. Who you are on the inside is always Yaakov. And so when we go back to the original question of which soul am I my animal soul or my godly soul? Am I my Yaakov or my Esav? My true inner self, my deepest self, my soul, my real identity is always my Yaakov, even if it's a much smaller part of my life. And even if the obvious, what you see at someone, when you look at someone, is just the Esav, that's not their true essence. Their true essence is only their Yaakov and who they are on the inside.
Sorry.
No problem. And so she basically, according to the Chidushei Rim, said that, are these secular modern Jews any less relevant to Torah? Are they further Jews? Who just said this story where he went to the Rebbe? I just heard this video where he went to the Rebbe and said that there's Jews who have no background. That he was so proud to tell the Rebbe that he did a shiur or made a minyan for 100 Jews that had no background. And the Rebbe kept looking and said, no background? And he said, no background. And the Rebbe said, no background a few times. He said, yeah, they have no Jewish background. And the Rebbe said, they have the background of being the children of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Go back and tell those Jews that they have their heritage, their background is just as strong as your background. To Jews. So Rivka said, are these modern Jews less connected to Torah and to the brachos of Yitzchak? She said, of course not, right? Even the Yaakov, who looks like an Esav, is an equally integral part of the bris and of the legacy of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. They're an equal child to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, no less so, just because they put on the clothing of Esav. It's exactly Yaakov. Yaakov hasn't changed. He's just a Yaakov dressed up like an Esav. And so she ensured that the spark of Yaakov, the essence of the Jewish neshama, would remain embedded in the heart of every Jew, even the Jews that other people dismiss as of an Esav. And so there's a bunch of takeaways from this. First of all, it says, it's so beautiful. Vayigash Yaakov Yitzchak aviv vayimishuhu. And he felt him. Vayomer kol kol Yaakov vayadai midei Esav. Reread this now, right? This is a Jew coming forward and saying that your hands might be the hands of Esav. You might even be acting like an Esav and fully assimilated, but your voice is Yaakov. The Laihi Kiru, and he didn't recognize him. Ki hayu yadav kedei Esav achiv. That's like how many times we see a Jew that you don't recognize as a Jew, and you assume that they're non-Jewish or that they're not connected to Torah or mitzvos because they look like a non-Jew. Vayomer ata zebni Esav, you're Esav, and he says no. Vayomer ani, he says it's me. Vayomer hagisha li, bring me food. And then he says, Vayara, okay, this is the most beautiful part. So this is like the craziest question, like, are you Esav? And that's what we ask ourselves. Am I Esav just because I dress that way or just because I act that way or look that way? Which is the real me? And he says, no, it was Yaakov all along. And that is such a powerful message that we need to translate into our education of ourselves and our children and how we look at every single person, Jew in the world. I'll get to the clothing in a moment. So the takeaways from this are really, really important. That
it's amazing that each person can see aspects of the Parshah in their week in the week.
yeah.
So even
You work at it.
furthest ones away, they would have that in their week.
That what?
They would have perspectives of the Parsha, not even knowing it because they might have not even known the Parsha.
Right.
So they'll do
It's
things.
so true. Okay, so let's start with this. First of all, as a shlucha, right? The Rebbe like looked at the Rivka Imenu was the first shlucha, was like the Rebbe's message to every shaliach in the world to go and find the Jews who might look like Esav on the outside and show them the Yaakov that they have inside of them and help them see and completely ignore how they dress. Doesn't matter, come as you are. That's like the motto of Chabad. We don't care how you look or what you drove or what you came in and how many tattoos you have. The Rebbe said, peer into the heart of every Jew, whether or not he looks like Esav, and see that kol of Yaakov inside of him and help him reignite his spark that's already there. You don't have to relight something new. You don't have to create a new thing. The spark is there, just like the wells of Yitzchak, who redug wells the wells are not uncovering new water or creating new water. There's water that's already there. The flame is there, the Rebbe said. You just have to help him spark his light and realize that even though he looks like Esav, he's still a Yaakov. In the words of the, I don't have the words. Yeah, it says that's the job of a shliach, basically, to peer humbly, that's the words, into, the Rebbe said that the vision of every single one of us, not just the Chabad shluchim, is to look at, go out of yourself and humbly peer into the heart of another Jew, and you will encounter the flame of Yaakov. You'll help him ignite his flame so that he can in turn ignite other latent flames until the entire world is aflame with the light of Hashem, right? That was the message at the Kinnas HaShulchan this year. If you saw the video at the banquet of this Navy SEAL who didn't even know he was to have anything connected to Judaism, and now he connected to the chaplain of the army. He was a Chabad shaliach there who helped him uncover his Jewish spark, and now he's engaged to a Jewish woman, and now he is teaching and lighting up other flames in the Navy SEALs, and he is inspiring others and teaching them Torah.
What's his name?
You have to look up the Chabad, the Shulchan conference banquet. It was one of the recordings. It was such a crazy story, and that's what the Rebbe said. He thinks like, he said, I have no connection to all this. Why would I go to shul? I have no connection. And he's like, no, just help him look inside his own soul. And how do we do that? And this is something I discussed with my husband. So number one is when we look at another person, right, and we see their animalistic self, and we see their selfish tendencies, and we see all these negative things, like the external negative traits in another person. We see how rude they are, how obnoxious they are. We see all these Esav tendencies. Rivka only saw it as potential for harnessing that animalistic self for godliness. like Esav saw the potential of Yitzchak saw the potential of Esav, and how Rivka saw the potential of the animal soul inside of her. We shouldn't get rid of Esav. We should utilize the power of Esav for holiness. We don't get rid of our animal soul. We don't push it away or say we don't need our animal soul. In fact, we realize that the name Rivka comes from, in Maseches Eruvin, it says, what does the name Rivka means? It's animals, oxen harnessed for working. It's taking the power of the oxen, and rather than just letting it run wild and saying let's get rid of these oxen because they're so powerful and dangerous and they could gore someone. It's a Rivka is when you take a few oxen, harness them together for plowing, for utilizing their power. And so there's two ways to look at the negativity of another person and the ace of power, and that like you have a kid or a child, or you see an adult who's like an angry, bitter person or has negative tendencies, or all this ace of potential and power, and they're like running destruction. You're like, let me channel. The Rebbe never looked at another Jew and saw like the ace of or the external of their clothing is negative. All he saw was the light inside of you and the potential to harness all of this animal power for Kedusha. How can I see all the potential inside of you and bring it out in the greatest way? And we should take these eyes and look at every Jew like the way Rivka did, and find these neshamos and not see negativity and just see power that we can harness for good. And so one is seeing past the outside, seeing the flame of Yaakov when we look at not just strangers, because sometimes it's easier as a Chabad shlucha to look at strangers and see, the ignore the externals of the stranger and to see the holiness inside of them. But also when we look at our own children, right? This is the hardest. And when we look at ourselves, that's much harder, right? When we look at our children, to be able to, and our family members, to be able to ignore the negativity, ignore the Esav, ignore how they're dressed, and say Hakol Kol Yaakov. The inner voice, the inner you, the real you is your Yaakov. The real me is not my Esav. My Esav is my external power. It's how I act, how I might behave. But my real inner voice is my Yaakov. And now, why is this so powerful? This is so crazy. If we would look at our children when they test our boundaries, right? When they start dressing or acting in a way that's not in line with our values, in a way that's against Torah, right? When we look at them and say, oh wow, like we get nervous. We're like, oh, now they're not religious anymore. Now they're not holy anymore. We're reinforcing that belief, right? We're reinforcing that that's who they really are. Instead, the greatest thing we could do, which is so hard. My son's on pretend. Hi, Sadik. Love you. Yeah, he's upstairs. I love you so much. Instead, the highest and most important thing we can do is get over our own, the triggers that come up for us, and be able to look past the external of how they're dressing or how they're acting, and see that beautiful neshama that we saw all along. Like, we know that deep down they might be acting this way or dressing this way or testing the boundaries, but deep down they are that. Remember that like beautiful little child who made brachais or who made kiddush, and look at that and say, that's who you really are. You're not who you dress. And my husband said something really wise. He said, maybe when kids test boundaries with how they dress or how they act, right? Then maybe they're trying to figure out, is my clothing, my external, making me the way that I am? Am I holy because of my clothing? Or is it that who I am is causing me to act that way and dress that way on the outside? And they're testing you to see which is the real me. Is it my outside influencing my inside? Which is the actual me? Is it my Esav, my externals, my clothing, or my inside? And when we see them changing their clothing and we're like, oh no, that means that now they're a different person, then we're reinforcing that question that they have. Like, oh, they're like, oh, I'm getting confirmation now that how I dress is who I am. And that affects who I am on the inside only because I dress that way. But if we would completely ignore, which is really hard, but if we would completely ignore the external actions and keep peering inside and looking inside and seeing that you are the same you because you have something beautiful and holy and special inside of you, then they would remember the message, and they would give them the message that I am not who I am because of how I dress, but I am who I am because of how I dress, and that just influences my actions. My actions and my externals, my dressing, my levushim, and my dress and the way I dress and act are influenced because I have a Kol Yaakov inside of me and not the other way around. And we ask ourselves that all the time. We do that to ourselves all the time. We'll all believe that because my repeated actions or behaviors are negative in a certain way, I'll start believing that that's me as well. And I have to remind myself that even if I have a repeated negative action or a repeated habit or something negative I've done my entire life, that doesn't define me. I'm defined by my godliness inside of me, by my purity. And if I can look at myself as a Yaakov that may have put on clothing like an Esav, we learned that the word beged actually means baigdav. The Medrash tells us that the next pasuk that I was going to read to you is that Vayarach es, that Yitzchak said, come closer, and he smelled his clothing. And read you the pasuk. Beged is clothing.
Right, but.
It also means, the Medrash says, V'yarach es begada v'yivrechehu. And he said, Re'ei reach b'ni kareach sadesh abercha Hashem. And the Medrash tells us that the word for clothing is also translated as the word bogdav, which means his traitors. A boged. A boged is a traitor. What does that mean? Our clothing betray us. Because our clothing are our biggest lie. Someone could dress up like a doctor or surgeon and walk in and lie to you. A millionaire could dress up like a poor person, your boss, right, undercover boss. So your clothing are the biggest betrayal. Your clothing represents your actions. It's not your true self at all. Your clothing is your betrayal. And in fact, they're atbash, which means if you change the letters of beged with beis gimel dalid, with the, like aleph is tough, beis is shin.
Have to go backwards.
That's called atbash. You get the letters of the word sheker. Beged is sheker. It's your clothing, and that's why baged is boged. So your clothing betray you are, right? A poor man could pretend to be a rich person. You could pretend to be you are. So your clothing and your actions convince you that this is who I am, that I am just this negative person, I'm a bad person, I'm an angry person, I'm a screamer, I'm a depressed person, or whatever it is that I convince myself that I am. I'm an insecure person, right? I'm not a confident person. I can't do this. I'm not capable of this. And those betray us because those are my actions. But if I look deeper, and what won't allow, and I'll realize like Rivka, to look beyond the external and realize those are just my clothing. Those could be changed. The same way that I can change my clothing in a minute, I can change my actions. Those are not they don't define me. My essence is what defines me, and that will eventually affect my clothing. And I think one of the most powerful takeaways is, imagine we could look at every child that way, and every Jew that way. And my husband shared a story where he went into his brother's Chabad house, and there was a guy covered in tattoos, bald, and he said, "Do you want to learn?" And the guy agreed. And then he said to my husband afterwards that, so many people have tried to learn with me, and you're the first person I said yes to. And he said it's because when everyone else looks at me and just like makes a definition of who I am, they assume I wouldn't want to learn. They have this they get so distracted by my external, but you just looked at me as a Jew or somebody who wants to learn. And because I felt that genuinely from you, I felt like you saw me, who I am on the inside, and not were distracted by my external appearance. And that's what it woke up his flame inside of him. And so it says, here's the craziest part. It says that Yitzchak smelled the reach of Bagdav. The Medrash says this. He says that Yitzchak smelled the traitors. What does it mean on a deeper level? He smelled his clothing. He smelled the future traitors that would come out of Yaakov Avinu. The traitors the Jewish traitors. And when that brought him, he said, that smells like the smell of Gan Eden. And because of those traitors, that's what's going to make me bless you. Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
The traitors of the Jewish nation, those Jews, the betrayers that assimilated, that betrayed their Jewish faith, and still came back and found Kedusha, even in and there's the famous story that I shared before of Yosef Meshisa, the traitor to the Jewish nation who betrayed the Jews to the Romans and handed them over to the Romans. He was called Yosef the traitor. And he he betrayed his people, and as a reward, he led them into the Beis Hamikdash, showed him where all the holy vessels are, in order to defile it, and in order to help them. And as a reward for his betrayal, they said, "Come into the Beis Hamikdash and take whatever you want as a reward." And he was like, "Great, I'll take the menorah. It's the most beautiful vessel." So he walks out with the menorah, and they look at him. They say, "No, not that. You're a simple man. Take something valuable." They say, "Put that back and take something else." And he says, "I betrayed my God once. You want me to betray my God again? I'm not going to go back in." And he refused to go back in. And as punishment, they did unspeakable tortures to him until he died. And he called out, "Woe is to my God that I betrayed him." The keys are in the car. Woe is to my God that I betrayed him. And that moment, and the question is, what suddenly awakened him? That exposure, I think the Rebbe says that what suddenly changed his mind. He was literally sold his soul. It was the biggest traitor. But at the moment that his neshama was exposed to Kedusha, being in the Beis Hamikdash, it awakened and reminded him that I am just Yaakov. I am not an Esav. As much as I define myself by being this traitor, he was called Yosef the traitor, the betrayer. That's not who I am. That moment of exposure was enough to light up and awaken that spark inside of him and remind him who he truly was. And he said, there's no way I'm going to go back again, to the point of giving up his life for it. And that somehow inspired Yitzchak to want to give the brachas to Yaakov. That portrayal of a Jew who's in the farthest place, who still is in touch with his neshama, who's still a Yaakov, who could still reconnect, that was more inspiring to Yitzchak than anyone else. Because Rabbi Waiwai shared a story of an even more modern. He said it doesn't have to be the Beis HaMikdash. So there was a Jew, Franz Rosenzweig, who was planning to convert. His brother-in-law wasn't Jewish. He was going to convert to Christianity. He had no connection. He was a survivor. And he said, I'm going to go spend my last Yom Kippur in the shul, in a shul, before I convert to become a Christian. And he walked in and he walked down. He called his brother-in-law and he said, after shul, he said, I decided to remain a Jew. Just that moment of exposure to the Kedusha, reawakened his, reminded him. And so how powerful if we can look at everyone. Imagine we can ignore how they look on the outside. It's hardest when it's our own child and it's our own selves, right? To ignore. It's easier when it's a stranger to, oh, you're in tattoos, you're a Jew, you're holy. But it's your own child that's triggering. Like, they're dressing this way. What's going to happen? Nothing. They're just checking. They're just testing the boundaries. They want to know who is the real me. They're figuring it out. They're going to uncover it. They're going to find their real selves. And the best way we could show them is when we look at them and we completely don't care what we completely say. Who cares what you wear? That's not who you are. Obviously we care. But when I realize that that's just such an external part of them, that could be changed in a moment. You are my precious child who has an infinite piece of Hashem. It doesn't change for a minute who you are on the inside. If we would look at them that way, then they would say, oh yeah, they would help them see themselves that way as well. And if I would look at myself and say, so what? I made a million mistakes. That doesn't define me. I messed up a million times. That's not who I am. Search deeper. Keep digging until you uncover the Yaakov inside every one of us. That's what the Rivka Imenus are. That's what every one of us is meant to do to others, to our children, and to ourselves, to look pure as deep as we need to go until we suddenly are confronted with that call of Yaakov and see that the call Yaakov, Vaydaim Midei Esav, is every single Jew, and help when we can peer inside of them. That's all we need to do to ignite the flame of another Jew. We don't have to force them. We don't have to do anything. We just have to light one Shabbos candle. That's why the Rebbe said, stand on the street corners and put tefillin on with the Jew. And suddenly you'll remind him, it'll reignite that spark of Yaakov inside of him. Who cares? The question was why did I tell you the Shabbos candle story? About the girl who, there was a mitzvah of Neshek, which means Nero Shabbos Kodesh. Yeah. To get girls, the one girl wanted to light Shabbos candles and her parents, anyways, the story is that a girl lit Shabbos candles once, and a secular Israeli girl, her parents were really, really upset about it because they were secular and they're like, we don't do this. And the whole family ended up becoming religious because it sparked that fire in them and in the whole family. It's a story that happened with my second cousin, who's a shlucha in the Kfar Baruch. And she was like a 10-year-old, was going around to secular school speaking about Shabbat candles and didn't know that just speaking once, lighting up the flame of one girl who was like, I want to light these candles because this cool girl came to my school and spoke about it. And that set off a chain. Just that little moment of exposure to your neshama reminds you that the true you, even though it's sa'ir, right? It's the smaller, it might be a tiny flame. It's the real you. That's why it says V'rav Ya'avot Sa'ir. The majority of you, it doesn't matter if it's your whole life and so much of your life and so long of your life and so many years of your life were spent in Esav things and in Esav clothing. It's subservient. The Rav will be subservient to the Sa'ir, to that little tiny flame of Yaakov inside of you. I wanted to share so much more, but it's been so long. So I guess I'll end here.
No, I'll do one more.
One tiny more thought is that, let me just finish this thought up. So that's the meaning of the traitors. Oh, he says after Ne'ilah, he sent a letter. Oh, there's one more story I wanted to end with as well. Remind me to end up the story of the final. Say it now. So there's a story, it's a very short story. There's a painter a man who would visit the Rebbe every week for $. I'm not a Chabad man. And he got a job as a contractor, as a painter. And he would work Sundays, and Sunday was a dollar line, and he didn't want to come to the Rebbe in his painter clothing. And so he stopped coming to the Rebbe. And one week he finally came, and the Rebbe said, I haven't seen you in a long time. Where have you been? So he explained to the Rebbe that his clothing were really dirty. And he didn't want to come. And the Rebbe said, come as you are, but just come. And that was like such a powerful moment. Like we like so often like don't come. Like I don't want to show up to my shiur so often. This hit home for me, the story, because like I feel like I'm not my best self. Like you've seen me at my worst. You've seen me at like it come to a shiur where I had a mental health breakdown that day.
Never.
You've
We've
seen
never
it.
seen it.
I've told you.
Oh, we've never seen it.
You
Right.
told it, but
And
you-
so I don't want to
That's
come.
right.
Like
You
I
don't
don't want to
believe it.
show up today. I'm like, this is my
I
worst
believe
year.
it.
The last few weeks also, my husband's been away. I haven't really prepared enough, and I like don't want to come. I don't want to show up with like my less than, or knowing how
Your least is so far above.
I have to
where
talk
we are
myself
at
up
the best.
every time and say, just come as I am, come as I am. That's what I say to myself. And like this message of like the Rebbe saying like, yes, so your clothes are dirty. You think I care about how dirty your clothes are? Imagine our children didn't visit us because their clothing were dirty, right? Imagine like we didn't like no, I didn't come. Like so what? So your clothing are dirty. And imagine I could say that to myself. And I could remind myself over and over again that my clothing might be dirty. I'm not my best self. I'm not in my best place. I'm not giving my best shiur. I'm not the best version of myself. I've given better shiurim before, but I'll still come. And I could still show up, and that's not what matters to people. And that will help me love those who I love as well, like the people who are not their best selves, whose clothing are dirty. That's just their clothing being dirty. Who they are on the inside is their essence. And so if we could remind ourselves this to everyone else, to extend that to our starts with ourselves. If we can love ourselves, then we can extend that to other people, to love their neshama, and to ignite that Yaakov inside of them, then we can spread it outwards as well.
Hear yourself.
L'chaim.
Shkoyach, and hear yourself.
May we all be a Rivka Imenu and be able to be those shluchas, be every one of us, go find those neshamais, see beyond the Esav, and help reignite, help them see the Yaakov inside of every single Jew, inside of us, ourselves, inside of our children. May we merit to see the good and the Yaakov in ourselves, our families, our spouses, everyone we encounter, especially those difficult people and rather than being upset and turned off by the negative traits, let's see them as powerful potential that could be harnessed for holiness. And may the tremendous brachos of Yitzchak, the powerful, much more powerful brachos of Yitzchak, come to us in abundance. And we merit the ultimate Mashiach. Thank you. And a Chodesh Tov. Next, thank you for joining. If you'd like to sponsor a shiur, the link is in the description.
She's
And
gonna
send
say,
this to your
"Shlomi,
friends
it's
if you
your
like
turn
this."
to change a diaper, and she's going to give a midrash quote.
No, that's not what I do.
In the